Okay, so let's take a look at how you can create Azure database for MySQL server, and we will use it to connect to MySQL Workbench, right? So first thing, we will go to Azure portal, then we will find Azure database, and there are multiple ways to check that. You can go to search bar or you can go to menu, then all services. Now within all services, click database, where you have option for Azure database for MySQL server. Click on that. Then what you can do is you can create a new instance by clicking on create. Now there are options to choose from for deployment. Flexible server is one such option. There are other tags like WordPress plus MySQL. You can choose that as well, but I will stick with flexible server. Click create. Now here I will show you the options and configurations that we can check before we can create our flexible server. Now on the right hand side you can see the estimated cost for whatever configuration you choose, and it will immediately affect your instance. For example, let's start from the beginning. Subscription, in my case my free trial is going on. You can use your pay as you go subscription. Then comes resource group. We select that, we choose resource group, right? Now after that we choose server name. Make sure it is unique because it will be tested against all the available names, right? Then you pick the region or go with the default. Then you have option to choose MySQL version as well. In my case I have version 8 available. In your case it could be 10, 9 or whatever LTS that is going on. Then comes workload. So if you have business, then go with small business. If you are enterprise, go with tier 1. And if you are just testing this out like me, then use hobby project or development option. Then comes compute plus storage, where you have 1 core, 2 GB RAM, 20 GB storage option. We will configure that, and we can also pick from available cores. So 1 to 20 cores is good enough for us. You can also choose between 2 to 64, but to remember that these would cost you and it would show up in your cost estimation. Right now we go back and choose the option. Here you can see I don't have preference for the zone, considering I have selected East US, so there are no zones there. Then high availability, which is something we pick on when we choose computer and storage. If you pick available option to enable high availability option, then that option for compute and storage will be affected. Right now on the right hand side you see the cost that is been developing so far, right? And then comes the option on the left, which is authentication, which is MySQL authentication, Azure Active Directory, and mix of MySQL auth and Azure Active Directory auth, right? And then you have admin username, where you have your name, password, right? You just review and create that, right? Once you create it, it will be listed as your instance like this. It takes around 5 to 6 minutes, which is a lot of time, so I created that instance in advance, and now we are proceeding to showing you the instance. Now once created, it will take you to a page like this, where you can see your details of your server. This is your server name. You can put this while connecting to your MySQL Workbench or any other application for that matter. Then your username, and then password that we just added during the creation, right? Then one more important thing is we choose networking setting, where we have to whitelist some of the IP addresses, right? So allow some public IP addresses and a range of IP addresses, and then save those settings, otherwise you won't be able to connect, right? Now let's move on to the connection part, right? So now we have everything ready for making the connection. Right now we will move to MySQL Workbench. So if you go to mysql.com and check for variety of products, you'll find Workbench being one such. This is something that is open for both community edition as well as enterprise edition. So you can connect to any databases that this Workbench supports. So as long as we are using all the required details from our Azure cloud and server name, username, and password, I think Workbench should allow us to easily get in and do the database operation. So I have downloaded this and I can search on my desktop for MySQL Workbench, and let's open this, right? So as already explained, as you can see, I already have all of the details available: server name, username, and password, right? Once you do that, you are good to go with manipulating your database. So I created the sample database along with employee table inside it, so I'll be accessing that, right? So this is the workbench, and I already have one connection which I want to delete now because that database doesn't exist anymore. So I will click on new connection. Here I will name this MySQL Azure. So that's my way of giving it some name. Then comes the username, then comes your server name, right? So server name, we paste it here. Ports will remain the same because those ports will be accessible on Azure cloud as well. Now comes the password, right? Now the thing is, before we go there, we should test the connection before saving this, right? So let me get the password. Right now I can store the password here, store in vault, right? And let's test connection. Let's see what it does. Successfully made the MySQL connection. If you get this message, that means you have everything set up properly, right? You don't need to change anything. Click OK and you have one connection within MySQL Workbench. Now I will double click on this and this should open in SQL editor. Now we will also explore MySQL Workbench a bit so that you can see how to manipulate your database. So what we will do, we will extract some data out. So you have administration options on this tab and schemas here. Now to check what contents we have within table, we can extract that with query. So we will, let's see, select rows. That will show us what we have so far, right? As you can see, these 4 entries. Let's put some data again into this. So insert into, and then we use sample dot employee, right? And here we use id, name, salary, department, values, where we have, like, let's say 5th entry, right? So 5th entry, and we add people in here with some salary, and let's say they are from cells, right? So I will keep on adding few rows into this. So execute, right? So we added one entry successfully. As you can see, the affected rows. Let's add one more entry. We will also add some salary there. Then department change, we can execute this. So we have one more successful entry, and right? And let's see, we have one more department added, right? So we have like few entries there. Now let's go back to your entire data, and here you see if we execute that, then we should get the output. So we added few entries into that existing table as well, so everything looks pretty cool. We managed to connect to the MySQL database instance on Azure cloud from MySQL Workbench. We did everything required to make that connection. We also manipulated the data to verify we are actually doing that, right? So if we use any tool like SQL Workbench, DBeaver, Azure Data Studio, everything would work just fine as long as you give the credentials to it to connect to.